I was talking to you and you couldn't hear me. Good evening, everyone. I hope you all had a wonderful day and that everyone's bright-eyed and bushy-tailed tonight. Um, we have tonight with us, we have Lindsey Barbour. And Lindsey is, I met Lindsey at, I think I dedicated you when you were a child, didn't I, Lindsey? I've known her for a long time, her and Abe. Great folks. And Lindsey is now, she's a CPA. She's now works for a local firm, but she used to teach at TCC, um, uh, training people in the field of doing accounting. And she is wonderful. So she is going to give us the joy of her presence tonight. Welcome, Lindsey. She is a
Thank
sanctuarian.
you.
And just we'd love for you to share whatever's on your heart. And
Okay.
everybody's one. We're delighted to be here with you.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking about tonight, and earlier today, for whatever reason, I thought about the typical toast that you do, especially in Jewish circles, of L'chaim. And so I kind of wanted to start with that tonight because I was listening to a Jewish rabbi talk about that and how we usually translate it to mean to life. And he was saying that really it should be translated to lives, and that we all need each other.
Nice.
And so I was just thinking about that. And then he also said that when wine enters a person, secrets come out. And apparently that's from Talmudic, tradition. And so I guess I'm here tonight to just share some secrets with you guys.
Beautiful. We will absolve you after you do that, Lindsey. So feel free.
Yeah. So I just kind of wanted to share a little bit about, I guess, what I started thinking about a few years ago. So last year, 2019, during Lent, I was hosting a Lent small group, and we were studying the Beatitudes. And it was kind of culminating from a long period of my life of about 5 to 10 years where I'd really gone through some transitions. There were faith transitions that happened, and just looking at my spirituality really differently. And then also in the process, just an awakening with, social justice issues, racial justice in particular, mainly because of my students at Tulsa Community College, and just becoming so, entwined in their lives and seeing how things were just so different for them. I had gone to TCC myself and felt that, I was a first generation college student at the time. My parents actually finished school, and now my dad has his doctorate, my mom's getting her doctorate. But at the time, they hadn't finished college yet. And it's kind of one of those things where you think, well, I worked my way through school and I worked hard and all these things. And then I'm encountering these students that were working hard as well, but their starting place was just so different than mine. I had such a support system that they didn't necessarily have, not to mention other barriers and things like that they were encountering. So it really shifted me. And in that process, I felt like just a transformation happened. And then I also discovered the Enneagram, and that was an awesome tool for me in self-discovery and figuring out that I'm a 2 on the Enneagram.
Father Paul did the Enneagram last night, so all of us are judging you right now. I mean,
Okay.
receiving you right now with joy.
Yeah. So, I actually left teaching about 2 years ago now, and went back into public accounting, which is such a different world for me. But it was really in response to some of the things that I realized about myself as a 2, that I had really found my identity as a teacher. that giving to others in that capacity was what I felt like gave me worth. You know, I wasn't conscious to that, but that was what was happening. So that was a big part of my decision to shift in my career and just kind of decide to find my identity another way, to go back to the source and um, decide who I am that way instead of just who I always had thought I was or who I should be. And so anyway, I'm processing all of this, and we started doing the Lent group and studying the Beatitudes, and you know, we were having such a great time, and all of a sudden I kind of had this revelation that not just was it important for me to have these Beatitudes in my life individually, but that it was actually progression of one to the other in my personal story. That God gave me first a revelation of being poor in spirit, and how he walked me through that. And then, you know, it led to just an opening in me to be able to mourn with others and also experience my own mourning, because also as a 2, I don't always feel my own feelings.
Yeah.
So
What did that look like, Lindsey? Your understanding of poor in the spirit, being poor in spirit. How did that actually translate for you?
yeah, so for me, it was a lot about surrender. And so when I think about the quarantine, you know, I think a lot of us are encountering this right now, that we are facing a situation that we can't control. And those are the types of situations I was facing at the time whenever I started having these revelations, where some of our business ventures, even myself, had started some, you know, a company, and that wasn't going so well at the moment. And there was just kind of a lot of financial pressure that was felt out of control for me. And I came to a place that I had to surrender that to God. And really, for me, meditation was a huge piece of that, and contemplation and learning how to go into nature and focus on my breath was huge. Just to the place where I could get to that point of peace, where I'd really let it go, the control of it. And so that's what I was thinking about, all of us going through the quarantine and how we're all now kind of collectively walking through that again. So when I started thinking about the Beatitudes as progression, I see it now as like this circular pattern where I continuously start over again. And so for me, the quarantine was another starting over point, because I started walking down that path the first time whenever I was going through financial difficulty, but also just all the situations that were happening. There were situations at TCC that were happening that were beyond my control. And then there were also situations at my kids' school, because that was when the name change, or part of that time was when the name change process happened. So my kids attended Lee Elementary, and then they changed the name to from Robert E. Lee Elementary to Council Oak Elementary. And that whole process was really life-changing for me, because of how enmeshed I really was in that community. And there was just a lot of pain and a lot of hurt that was coming out from all sides. And I was really absorbing a lot of that. And I felt very out of control in that situation too. And so becoming poor in spirit was really recognizing my own need for God, because honestly, up to that point, I felt like I didn't really need God that much. Like, I wasn't conscious to that, but that's really what I believed, because I had learned how I'm kind of a self-controlled person. And I'm also logical. So it's like, if you do A and you do B, you get C result. And, you know, if you make good choices, you get good results in life. Like, that's kind of what I had experienced, and that's what I expected at that point. And so it was really a time for me to recognize that that's not the case, and that I really do need God in all of this, you know? And so, and also just waking up to the systems that I had trusted, you know, capitalism and, like, you know, even religion to a degree, like these systems that I had so trusted in that I thought were solid. And recognizing that nothing like that is actually solid, you know, that
Yeah.
the only thing that we can truly rely on is God. It just really woke me up to all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
let me make a comment because and maybe you want to reflect on this because it's funny how oftentimes the things that we embrace are generally true. So like the law of sowing and reaping, if you're nice to someone, generally speaking, they're nice back. If you're wise with your spending, generally speaking, you end up being advanced, so it's easy. The problem, I think, comes in when we think that we are in control as a result of that, right? So that's where stories like Job come in, where he's a perfect man. According to the text, there was no one more righteous, right, in the world, in the land than Job. And yet he has this moment of deconstruction where things aren't as they were hoped to be. Did you feel yourself in that deconstruction? Because the flip side of that is to think that none of your actions matter. I mean, they really do, but they don't matter perhaps as completely as we sometimes think they do, or that we somehow get control from those things. So how do you hold in tension the general principles of doing certain things because they generally turn out okay, over against the fact that ultimately those things don't really control the world? Am I making sense what I'm asking?
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that I really, I guess what I came to in those moments of meditation and everything was with that connection to God. I recognized that all I was called to do was to be in that moment. And so, in all those situations that I was out of control in, when I would just show up and be who I was called to be, like that's what would shift things and change things. And I could only do that coming from that place of connection. Because otherwise, I thought I knew what the next right step was.
Right.
Try it, and my wheels would just spin, and nothing would happen. And but as soon as I would just kind of surrender to the being, I actually thought about this with Harry Potter is like my favorite thing, and there's a scene where he takes the Felix potion that he wins, and they call it liquid luck. And he's trying to get this memory that he needs to get from one of the professors. And so he decides to, take liquid luck. So he has this potion, he's won it, he has it available. It's supposed to help you in all your endeavors. So he needs to do this to defeat Voldemort, the evil one. And so he takes the potion and then he takes off towards Hagrid's hut. And all of his friends are like, okay, wait a second. You're supposed to be going to talk to this other guy that we need to get the memory from. And what are you doing? And he kind of gets this dumb look on his face and he says, I have a really good feeling about going to Hagrid's hut. And I don't know why, but that's what I feel like I'm supposed to do. And so that's kind of the way that I've ended up walking through life in the last couple of years. It is like, let me just take my potion in the morning and walk out the door with a dumb look on my face and let's see what happens. Because, he was trusting in the potion basically to work, and he shows up at Hagrid's hut. The professor, along the way, they bump into each other that he needed to talk to. He comes with them, and all of these things align to where he's a little inebriated and he's gotten something he really wanted and he's feeling really good. And he gives Harry what he needs, when Harry already tried it once on his own and it didn't work. And so that's kind of how I've started to see this whole process in my life, that when I'm surrendered and when I'm walking through the Beatitudes steps and I'm learning from it. So it's like, poor in spirit and surrender is kind of the first thing for me, but mourning with those who mourn was really next. I mean, just really feeling what other people are feeling, allowing myself to do that. And I couldn't do that until I'd surrendered my own control of my own life. Because as long as I wanted to be in control of my own life, then that's all I had space for to think about, was how am I going to get what I need to get for my life? And I just started to realize that whenever I'm connected to God, that he creates in me the capacity to care for other people's lives, the capacity to care for people that are different than me. And I didn't have that on my own. I didn't have the capacity because all I could do was survive kind of from day to day, and it's like, we're so privileged, we have everything. And yet we feel like we're just continually surviving, every day. And I couldn't get out of that cycle until I kind of walked through all of this and let God really do a transformation in me. And of course, after that, it's like humility. God blesses the humble, and especially as a 2, which pride is my my vice. Again, thinking I had the answers and thinking I could solve the problem. And so walking through that and realizing like what true humility is, and how some people struggle with like self-deprecating, like thinking that that's a good way to be humble, to think of themselves as less than. And that's kind of the opposite end of the spectrum than what I struggle with. But it's just the same. Like, we have to be, there's something that we were called to do, like each one of us, and we're supposed to shine in the world with that. And we can't unless we really believe that we're connected and our being in every moment is important. And it's not about us as individuals at that point, because it's really about what we're connected to, that we're just reflecting out into the world. So, so that was, it just kind of progresses from there. And then, like I said, every time I kind of go through this process and learn in a new way, I find that I end up like right back at the beginning again, learning in this situation to mourn with the world kind of in this whole process, and to allow space for that, just because it's hard, it's really hard time that we're in. But I think it's just such an opportunity, it kind of near the end, he talks about God blesses the peacemakers. But to me, I see the peacemakers as being people that walk out in the world and envision a new way forward. And so I think that's what, we are all going to be faced with, is this opportunity to rethink our own personal lives, and also just like society in general, and how we do things, how we run things. My hope is that things will change and not just go back to the status quo. But unfortunately, the Beatitudes end with, like, you're going to be persecuted. So it's like, if you go and you interrupt the status quo, you're going to be persecuted, But if we've allowed this type of transformation to happen in our lives, then I believe that we're going to be equipped. We're going to be equipped, and we're going to have what we need in us to walk this type of path out, where we can be truly countercultural. We can be different. Okay,
so let me ask you this. So in your analogy with the Harry Potter potion stuff, which we're surprised you didn't end up demon possessed after watching Harry Potter, but be that as it may, what is, in your analogy, the the potion for you, if I'm understanding you right, is a different orientation to your world, instead of it being centered around you being the master of everything by your choices, that you began to try to orient vis-a-vis the Beatitudes to realize you're really just part of something larger than yourself, and sort of leaning into that. What does that actually look like? So what is your little vial? What is it that you take each morning that orients you? That, do you go back to the Beatitudes? Do you go, is it your meditation? Is it what has been the thing that has helped you to remember this orientation?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can be different, every day. But there definitely, I think the meditation of just getting still is the thing that it's like I need it at times in my life. And I can tell now when I'm very depleted, to the place where it's not an option. Like I have to go do it right now, because I think, I call it being in the flow when I've taken my potion. And I just feel like if I can get quiet like that, then I feel filled. I feel filled with something else outside of myself. And I've gotten used to that. So, meditation is a practice, because the more you do it, the more you can fall into that sort of mental state of being, even when you're not presently meditating. So I can be sitting in the midst of people or at work, and I can experience that same sense of peace and fullness, outside of being in a meditative moment. So I feel like I've gotten used to that feeling through the years, to the place to where when I'm out of that, I start to feel it so keenly, especially when stress happens and it's maybe just something stupid like my kids, being crazy or whatever. And I have zero patience for it. And I get to this place where I know my cup's not full. Like I've got to go get it filled up. But, I also do like the daily office. And I think it's just been very orienting for me, specifically the confession prayer. I've realized how much I really need that reset every day, to just allow the Holy Spirit to bring to mind, what it is. And it's not a quote unquote sin. Usually it's the conversation that I had, that I was talking more than I was listening. And,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, and it's just so great for me to, with, grace for myself, because I really am passionate actually about, like, against legalism, I should say, because of historical past experiences that I've had where I grew up in situations where there was a lot of shame and guilt and things like that. And so just the idea of confessing your sins is a little bit difficult for me because of that. But
Mm-hmm.
when I've leaned into that practice, in a very grace filled way, that, and then the absolution as well, but knowing that I think the whole practice of humility and self-reflection and the Enneagram and looking at things as your shadow side, it helps me to recognize that this isn't something bad that I need to feel guilt and shame
Mm-hmm.
about. This is human, and all I can do is now I know what I need to do to be in the flow, to be walking out my life in this way where it's really about who's God's going to bring into my path. I don't have to manufacture things. God's going to bring the right people to me. God's going to put the right situations together. And, so, and I'm going to be prepared for that. I'm going to be ready for that, because I've been in this place of self-reflection and willing to look at my own shadow side.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you so much, Lindsey. You know, one of I think a great takeaway here is that interesting from Father Paul's sharing last night. And by the by, if any of these eights you've enjoyed, they are online. You can go back and listen to different ones. But the beautiful thing about understanding yourself a little bit is really to help you find those spaces where you do become most dependent on the Spirit and most in contact with your own self and how you relate and open yourself up and need to open yourself up to God. And it can be a number of different issues, from things like encountering creation to meditation to doing the office to just different things that you can do. What's important is for you to not copy anyone, but to find those spaces that most open you up and help you not depend on what you're doing, but on the one in whom you're opening up to, and the kind of sense of unity with the Spirit of God and the presence of God and yourself, right? Being one with God in those kinds of contexts. So I love that. I love the idea that when we're most centered on being and not trying to manufacture doing, because we are human beings, right? As they say, not human doings. That whenever we start navigating through life, it's only when you're at rest in your own heart and you're aware of your own self and presence with God and in a kind of a way that's internal, you're never going to have the peace of mind to move forward in the world. So thank you very much. That's wonderful. Anyone want to comment or make any statements? We're just about out of time. We are, by the by, doing some shifting. I want to share that, a couple of things, but anyone just want to make a comment or in some way how this is reflects to you? Okay. Hey, it's wonderful to see Blaine. Hey, Blaine Bartell. I love you, man. I see you frozen, but I think that's your portrait. You're a nice looking guy.
It's because I'm lying in bed. I doubt you guys want to see me lying in bed right now.
It would. Okay, well, we're glad that you're here, my friend. A couple of things. Next week, we start changing our approach to this. We're going to be doing Tuesdays and Thursdays instead of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We'll have some guests on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we're going to be doing Compline, which is the book-ended side of the Book of Common Prayer. It's a short office. It lasts about 10 minutes. We'll be doing it at 9 p.m. So if you're up and about and want to do that with us, you can certainly join us. We're going to continue meeting at 8 in the morning for the Book of Common Prayer, and certainly invite you to do that as well. One other thing, be praying about the church in general. I mean, as the church begins to think about how to open up like the country's opening up, there's all kinds of issues that are at play. There's a lot of us that are very conservative. We're going to move slowly in terms of that, but we're going to be sharing kind of what we're thinking. In terms of opening up, we're going to continue to be online, but we might start doing things like a small Eucharistic service, initially for under 10 people, that people can sign up for and come to. And then we're also thinking about, after our broadcast on Sunday morning is opening up for people simply just to come up to the church in their cars and receive the Eucharist in a very safe kind of way. So we're kind of starting to think about that. We kind of think things are going to be shut down for another few months in terms of being able to openly get together. And we're not even, we're not sure if what the new normal will be until there's some sort of a vaccine or other kinds of things that are in play. And we certainly are interested in keeping people safe, not interested in walking in fear, but we are interested in keeping people safe. So we'd appreciate your prayers in that regard. So anyway, the Lord be with you. And pray that you can receive the grace of God and that you'll have a wonderful night. And we'll see you on the 8th next time. God bless. Thank you, Lindsey. Great job. Godspeed.